Welcome to Care Notes with Doug Wilbur, sponsored by Cherished Companions. Doug has been podcasting with New Cleveland Radio for over 8 years, sharing practical, compassionate insight on aging in place and many realities of growing older. And we are all growing older day by day. Did you know that roughly 80% of us want to age in place? I think, Doug, you've mentioned that in the past. Aging in place means at home in a familiar surrounding. Not only is it less expensive, believe that or not, but it also allows us to age with more grace, dignity, and purpose. Many older adults never get the information or support they need to make these choices. Too often, families end up moving loved ones into facilities by default, not preference. While many communities are beautiful and well-intentioned, the costs are high, staffing is stretched, and independence can slowly slip away. I've seen both sides, facility care and home care, up close in my own family. My grandfather, back in the 50s and 60s, chose, after living with us for a year, that he wanted to live in the Jewish home for the aged. He knew other people living there. And when he moved in, he was extremely happy. He made new friends and found old friends. He had a community. However, as he got a little older and health issues became a little bit more apparent, things didn't look as good to him as they did initially. Today, I want to bring this podcast to a personal level, and I'm hoping that those of you listening will maybe get a piece of paper and a pencil and write down the questions that you may have as I pose them to Doug, because he has an expertise in home care to help all of us better understand how to navigate this stage of life. How do we decide whether to age in place or move into a supportive community that still honors autonomy? How do we find the financial, physical, and emotional resources we need, especially if we're not wealthy, don't have home equity, and do not have things like long-term insurance care or VA benefits, sorry about that. The cost of aging, particularly long-term care, is one of the biggest financial and emotional challenges many of us will face. Even if you've planned and saved, the reality of someday arriving as today can be sobering. The cost of aging is only going to go up. On Care Notes with Doug Wilbur, we're going to talk about these questions openly. And boy, Doug, do I have a list for you today. We'll explore options, share tools and stories, and invite you, our listeners, to be part of the conversation. What are you doing to prepare? What has helped you or your loved ones? And where are you still feeling lost or overwhelmed? So let's dig deep. Now, Doug, you and I have been talking for the last 8 years about home care. And right. I've shared stories of my mother's illness and what we went through. But I was by her bedside for 2.5 months, so I could navigate through some of the questions we had. But right now I'm navigating 1,000 miles away out in California, where prices are high to begin with, and there's a lot of overcrowding. And my brother happens to live in a community of 22,000 retired individuals. They have a lot of support systems. Yeah. When I ask them questions about in-home healthcare, they shrug their shoulders and they give you a list of people to contact. And my brother at first was making those contacts, but his hearing isn't all that well. His eyesight isn't all that well. And he was becoming overwhelmed. So sister got the invitation to help him.
Yeah.
I'm overwhelmed too, Doug. The first
Yes.
question I asked today, um, because I have found some organizations that can help out, was the cost of in-home healthcare. Now, I know in a facility, it can cost you $100,000 a year, depending on the services and where you're living. My
Oh
brother,
yeah, $100,000 is easy to spend a year. I mean, yeah, I would say that that can almost be in some areas a minimum that someone would spend. And there are differences too, because I will say this between, say, assisted living, what you may spend for that, and then, as you were mentioning, as your needs increase, if you're in skilled, it can go significantly higher. So,
absolutely. And I know there are some people and some families that choose what I think it's called, not sure what it's called, where you take your money that you have and you sort of distribute it so that you're eligible to go on Medicaid. But Medicaid facilities, not all of them are really run as well as most of us want to expect. Um, and I don't fault them because in many cases, they don't have the Medicaid funding is limited. And that means that they can't take care of the facility in the same way as some of these others that are charging $100,000, $200,000 a year can keep them looking beautiful and bright and give you all the care that you need.
right.
So, how do we start preparing our society to we prepare for birth and we even prepare for death, but we don't prepare for aging?
Right. Yeah. It's a part of it is, and first of all, I want to say, um, I in all the years we've done this, I have never done it from my remote studio, which is my car. Uh, I happen to have done an intake, and we already pushed it off because it was kind of an urgent thing that we're doing it. And so I thought, well, I'll just this is what I'm going to do, and we'll do it from my car. So I wanted to at least explain, but it is really out of care that I'm doing this because I wanted it to help someone that had a need,
Yeah,
and so we're working from my remote studios. Um, but getting back to the preparation, um, I think we have to break it down to so much in life where we live in a lot of denial. Um, and, that's for later, that's for a different time, whatever. And because we want to live life. And so the thought of preparing for when things aren't going to be as good is hard to put our wrap our minds around
right.
because we don't want to think of ourselves in those terms in part, and we also live in denial that we will actually be that person that is in that situation. And one of the things I've learned is that you probably will be if you're fortunate because that means you've lived long enough that you're going to have need. Obviously, we should prepare in different ways, and in for different things in our lives. So you have life insurance, and the reason is in case you pass away, your kids can be taken care of, or so we have health insurance because the fact is none of us want to get sick, but we want bills to be taken care of if and especially in the catastrophic
Sure.
event that something huge happens. Um, but I think care is one of those areas that we oftentimes want to put off and not think about when it comes to personal care, like needs that we might have an aide helping us or going into a place where there are aides or other support structures. So I think that is one thing that we have to overcome in order to be able to say, you know what, I'm just going to be a realist. I know that like these other things that I've planned for, I have to plan for this. Um, and I will say this is those people that get long-term care insurance, and you don't get it long-term care insurance when you're 80. That's just not how it works. You have to get that when you're 40 or 50, and then as a preparation for later on. And if you do it, it oftentimes takes a lot of the pressure off when you actually need it because you have this long-term care insurance. One thing I would recommend is that if someone is getting long-term care insurance, they really look over the policy carefully and don't just sign up for something, but really look and compare plans and see, I would get things like something that would change with inflation. So you're not getting something in today's dollars in 30 years. So that type of preparation is usually an earlier in life type of preparation. You know, most often right now, the people that are kind of they're their ears are perked up as far as like I need help. It's because they're needing help right now, and so then we have to have value strategies, like what is going to bring the most value, how can I stretch the dollar that I have, how can I make that happen so that what I want is accomplished, the goals that I have happen. And so you really do need to take different. If you're the child of someone or the younger sibling of someone that needs care, then you may have time for the long-term care insurance or other things.
So
But
let me ask a question, because it's something that my parents put into effect very early on. They made sure that one of us would be in charge of their financials if something were to happen to them. One of us would be their medical proxy, and one of us was a sign off on a living will. And my parents researched what they wanted. They had it all put together. They sat all three of us down, my two older brothers and myself. They told us why they were picking each one of us to do a certain part. And they let us decide if we didn't want to take part. But of course, we did. However, my parents knew an attorney who helped them through all this process. Not all of us have that attorney friend who we can call up and ask the questions. How do we find out how to put this all together, and if it's cost effective? And if we don't, then what happens? Because what I'm seeing happen right now for my brother, he had our other brother signed up. Okay. Our other brother passed away in September. He hasn't changed anything, but he keeps asking me to be on the phone with him when he goes to the doctor. And the doctor is saying, nope, I won't talk now because she's not on your paperwork.
right.
I've been able to go out and gather information for him, but I can't make appointments for him or anything else because my name isn't on anything. our deceased brother's name is still on all the paperwork.
Right.
How do we help individuals understand that this is so important to take care of? And there probably should be a secondary person listed right from the beginning, because we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's actually the point that I was going to make, is that you don't have to designate just one person. You can have a succession of different people that you can assign. So I know with my mom, I think we had kind of a 1, 2, 3, with but we had multiple powers of attorney. Now we also had a family that got along really well, and we're pretty much I would say there is a lot of agreement between the siblings, so that I would never question the decision that one of my brothers or sisters would make, because we see life very, very similarly. But ultimately, what we also want to be doing is not what we want to do, but what that other person wants to do. So to your point, you could have multiple people, and it may be that you go to this person first, and then if you can't get a hold of that person, you go to this person, or if they're deceased, then want this person. And lawyers can draw that up. The other thing is, you need to express to that individual exactly how you want things to be handled in as many scenarios as you can think of. So, you in your brother's case, to say, hey, I don't want any massive life-saving type of things if that's what he would want. But expressing that while you have your faculties is very, very important. You don't want to be guessing what you think that person, because you could have guilt if you think, I don't know what he wants. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And then it becomes like, I think this may be what he wants in sort of the best case scenario. In the worst case scenario, it's I'm just going to do what I think,
Right.
is right. And that may be okay with some people. They want them to make the best case, based on because they trust them to carry out wishes, and they see things similarly. But I do think making your wishes known, while you have your faculties, is important. But because one of the problems is, if someone, I'm surprised at how many people don't have powers of attorney set up. And what happens in that situation is what's happening with you. But, not because your brother didn't have a plan, the plan didn't work.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in those circumstances, where people don't have a designated power of attorney, um, you need to get that switched while, as long as someone can make those decisions. And they can actually make it fairly long, even if they, start having some issues, if it's deemed that they can still make good decisions on their own of what would reflect their desires and their will. And probably only like an elder care lawyer or a lawyer of some sort would be able to determine that type of thing.
So I know there's paperwork on the internet that you can fill
Yeah,
out for yourself. Um, at least that would be a beginning, that you might feel comfortable enough to know that your children, your siblings know your wishes. These are the people that you want to put in place. Um, I know I had a long talk with one of my brother's daughters, my niece, who also has her own health challenges. Um, and because of her health challenges, she understands some of the issues that my brother is really going through now. And
Yeah.
her first concern was, well, why does he want you to be in charge? Why not me? And my comment to her was, number one, he's still cognitive. Go and ask your dad that. It's not for me to,
Right. Yeah.
but part of it was that, he knows that she's got her own challenges and he didn't want to burden her. Um, for some reason, both my brothers um, started seeing me in a different light when we were taking care of my mother. And all of a sudden it was, you're not the baby sister anymore. Boy, you got a head on your shoulders. And
Mhm.
we trust you. And we're going to let you be an adult now, which I thought was quite interesting. I had to wait till I was 65 years old to be an adult, but I was an adult. Um, I have to tell you, in the past couple months, I haven't wanted to be the adult. And I think there's many of our listeners who are probably feeling the same way. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want to be responsible, but you also want your loved one to be taken care of and taken care of properly. So one of the things that I started checking out for my brother in the last couple of days was getting him some assistance in his home. Um,
Right.
so to expand on his situation, he is married, but his wife is in the beginning stages of dementia. So she really is not a support system for him. Um, and some of the things that he has needed in the past couple weeks, just like meal prep, just just can't do it at certain
Yeah.
times. And instead of him getting upset with her or me getting upset that, hey, why doesn't your wife step in? I understand these things, but where is there any agency that we can reach out to? And I'm going to talk about in Ohio right now that can help us understand um, some of these things. I know when you do an intake for somebody, you probably provide them a lot of this information so that they are prepared for what they're signing up for or choosing not to sign up for.
Right.
Where do we find people like you that we can go to and ask these questions? Because I wouldn't have known where to go if we hadn't been doing this program for 8 years.
Yeah. I guess that's actually a kind of a loaded question in
Yeah,
many ways because um, the the it there is no single repository of information that people can utilize or there are lots of different sources like the AARP site. You may be able to glean information from there. Yeah, the depending on specific health issues, you may be able to go on places like the Alzheimer's Association, and there are groups that are involved in that and even support groups, which are wonderful and great resources. Certain diseases that are debilitating, people can rely on those to help them understand a pathway through. And honestly, part of the idea of care notes is to be able to give that information in nuggets, so that people look at this. I know that the idea of doing, this kind of podcast is not like a sexy thing. It's not, there are a lot of other things that could be um, that I could do that would be fun or funny or whatever. But this is such a big need that I'm trying to get information out to the public so that they can balance it out. Um, our website has a lot of information at cherishedagency.com. Feel free to go on it, look at it. There are free resources that we have, even checklists of questions you can ask people on, that are you're you're doing interviews for, that you can pull off and utilize those, for asking questions or knowing what you need to ask, questions that might be helpful. Um, so, but as I said, even there's some government websites where you can go on and get information, but there is no one spot. Maybe I need to create that spot. So, the probably the best thing that I can suggest as far as like for, um, when you're looking at a home care, let's say that is an option, is to talk to, an organization, and so often they can act like I do and help with understanding. Now, some people are just going to try to sell you something. They may try to get you in hours, but a really good, strong, reputable organization, person's going to come in and they're just going to try to help you. They're going to try to help you sort through and make sense of the need, and then hopefully give you the understanding of resources that you can then utilize. There are care managers out there. Care managers are basically an advocate. Oftentimes they're either a social worker or a nurse. They don't have to be, but that's oftentimes what they do, and they work either alone or within an organization, a larger group of folks that do this, and they will oftentimes be like they would act like you would act if you were on site. Um, as the sister, the doing the research, doing the advocacy, getting people in. And there are, care manager companies that are out there, care manager individuals that will be able to be an advocate, and you can use it for a few things, or you can use it for a lot of things, to have that. So those are at least two sources, or well, I gave more than two sources, but two on the ground sources that you could potentially use.
So one of the things that I've noticed, so in the past 2.5 months, my brother has been in and out of the hospital half a dozen times or more.
Yeah.
And when he is in the hospital, they act like we have no idea what's wrong with you. They'll run him through a few tests. They'll keep him there for a couple days. Then they discharge him. And at least the hospital he's been at, he hasn't gotten a full discharge summary when he's left. Now, here in Ohio, most of my doctors are through University Hospital. When I leave their office or when I leave a hospital stay, in my chart is a whole discharge paper that says you're on this medication, you're no longer on this medication, we ran this test, whatever. He has not gotten that. And I got that verified by one of his doctors. When I asked the doctor, how do we get the information? The doctor just shrugged his shoulders, said, I don't know. And I said,
Really?
wow, that's a little scary. Okay. Because my brother went to him from his last bout being in the emergency room over the holidays. And he was on triplicate medications that all did the same thing. One of his issues is he retains water. And because he's retaining water, he now has been diagnosed with congestive heart failure. So they said, well, you got to change your diet and you can't be on all these pills. And oh, by the way, this pill actually makes you retain water. So we asked the question because I was on the phone. So are you going to take him off of that medication? Because obviously that could kill him. And the answer was, that's his choice. Now, I don't have doctors like that. I am very lucky. My doctor would have known right away and would have changed the medications and made sure I was on the right ones.
Right.
This is something that not only did I see him go through, my mother sort of went through some of this as well until we intervened and said, hold on, you know, like,
Yeah.
don't treat her like she doesn't know what's going on. And if she doesn't know, then we are her proxy, and we'd show the piece of paper and say, now talk to us. And
Right.
we could get them to change. Is is this common in the medical field because people are just getting old and doctors don't want to get involved?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think we're blessed in Cleveland because we have a really, really phenomenal group of hospitals in this area. I mean, the level of care we get here is as good as anywhere in the world. With the Cleveland Clinic and University Hospitals and Metro, and they're just it is a we're blessed.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
all I'll say. But not everyone has. They're not in an area. They don't have the hospital system. They don't have whatever that we have in this area that has really created that type of atmosphere where you have outstanding doctors who actually care. And so but I think standard of care is things like the my chart system that most of the hospitals have in this area, but are largely spreading around the country, where you can actually look and you can see the notes, you can see the information, so you can see what medicines someone's on, and the critical thing is getting on that system, because so often it's there, the doctors are doing it, and maybe that particular doctor, I don't know whether he just was technically not very savvy, so he really didn't know. I have no
Could
idea
be.
how you
Yeah, yeah.
get.
And
So
I have to say, after me being on the phone through that appointment, my brother and I both made the decision that he needed to find somebody who would respond more directly and give him the guidance that he needs. Um,
yeah,
and so he went to one of his other doctors and he said, okay, I know you're my heart specialist, but I need a good primary who's going to put this all together for me. And if one of you accidentally makes a mistake and puts me on a medication that's not good, at least my primary can look it over and can navigate through this. Um, and I
yeah,
never thought that we would, in this day and age, we would have to do something like that. But I'm very glad that I was on the phone, I got the information, and realized that when he was reading off the names of the medications, I was Googling them. And it was like, oh, that's for water retention. Okay, makes sense. Oh, that one is too. Why
right,
did they two? Oh, wait a second. This one is going to make him retain fluid. Oh, and the other thing that he was told by a nurse, we don't want you to drink water because you're going to retain fluid. I said, no water at all? I mean, that sounded a little odd to me. So again, I did some Googling and no, he has to be careful of his fluid intake, but to be told never to drink water ever again did not make sense. So those were,
no, that did. I mean, typically they'll say limit it to. I mean, if someone does have water limitations, it's typically say don't drink more than X amount, and they'll
exactly.
tell you what that amount is. It may be, whatever number, and then you use that as a goal. We'll try to keep it underneath that amount, and so it was, I I wonder if it was just the way she was describing it,
It,
or was she really
well, and again,
that bad?
yeah, I was not privy to that conversation, but after she left the room, he called me on the phone and he said, I can't drink water anymore. And I said, that's a little odd. I said,
Yeah,
I can understand maybe you're not supposed to have caffeinated drinks, and maybe you're not supposed to be drinking coffee, and maybe you have to limit your water intake. But I said, not drinking water at all? And he goes, yeah, that does sound a little odd. And I said, well, we're going to have to find out what that's about. Um,
right.
so that to me, for our listeners, if you're going through something alone, you need to find a support system. And I loved what you said earlier, Doug, that there are support groups out there. And if you happen to be somebody who is part of ARP or you're on Facebook, there are people out there who are sharing what they're going through. And there happens to be a group called, I believe it's Elderly Orphans. And it basically is adults who are aging, who don't have children, maybe don't even have a spouse or they've lost their spouse. And they're going through this process on their own. And sometimes we get a little embarrassed to share it with our friends because we want to look like we're handling it. Um, so these support groups can be very helpful. And
Oh yeah.
it was because of one of the groups online that really pushed me to make the phone calls I did yesterday, um, to get through some of these agencies and realize which ones just wanted the dollar from us and which ones were saying, no, these are the services that we can provide. And this is what the cost is going to be. And not being afraid to tell us, what the cost was. Um, so,
Yeah.
what I'm hoping that we can do as we progress through 2026 is get our listeners to start sharing with us so we can answer some of the questions that they're going through. Um, I know as I do more research, I hope to have more answers, and the answers may be just for me. They may
Right.
not apply to our listeners, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a way to go out and do some research. And as a podcaster and a life coach, if there are people out there that, hey, you know, they don't want to do the Googling on their own, um, you know, I will be more than glad to do some Google searches and give you a lifeline to start looking, no charge, because I want somebody to do that for me the day that I can't do it for myself.
Well, and the other thing that when you're going through something, that's well, but it's kind of twofold. One is you can feel very overwhelmed very quickly because and so often the people who are trying to find out things are dealing with aging themselves. And so as people get older, it becomes harder and harder to take in a lot of information and to kind of sort through it. And it's not because people are stupid, it's the opposite. It's just our minds don't work in the same way that they worked when you're younger.
Absolutely.
And so it's nice to be able to say, hey, this is a dilemma. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure where to reach out to. And and I mean, just like I've done so many intakes that there are very few things that I haven't seen. So, and that's a good thing because if I can be a resource, I'd love to be a resource. I'd love to be able to say, hey, and to disseminate. that to a lot of people, because if you're having an issue, that means thousands of other people are
Right.
having that same issue. And so if we can answer it for one person, um, we can, and if we can podcast it, we may be able to solve a problem for many, many other people, not just that individual person with the question. So I love what you were saying there, that it's really good if we're able to help that individual, but if we do it in the right way, we're going to help a lot of individuals.
Absolutely. And
Yeah,
there is help out there. We just have to be able to jump in and start navigating it. And like I've said to all my clients, you know, we have to stop being afraid to ask for help because we're always willing to help other people. So that means there's somebody out there who is willing to help us as well. And
right.
I think if we can start off 2026 and do it on the right foot, um, we're going to find aging maybe it's a little easier than we thought, and aging in place is doable. So
Yeah.
thank you, Doug, for joining us again today. As some of you may notice, we have a new backdrop um, because I wanted to ensure the number one, when we're doing this, that on our backdrop, we always can connect Doug Wilbur with who he is, um, and that his organization is inspiring. It is extraordinary. And you are providing care at home for those who need. And can't thank you enough for companions.
Yeah, well, thank you also for being open and sharing what your struggles were, and having that vulnerability in doing that. And because again, you sharing what you've struggled with actually translates into other people being able to say, yeah, that's what I'm going through, or that's what I need help with, um, and as much as and I've been on the other side too. Not only have I helped individuals by what we do, but I've said many times I helped my own mom, and through her um, stages of dementia and issues around dementia. So this has a very personal element as well as a professional element. One of the reasons that I try to meet with all of our clients and do the intakes is because I never want to forget, I don't want to lead a company. I want to help people. I mean that, and lead a company in order to do that. But I don't want to be too far away from what we're always about. And what we're about is making a difference in people's lives and making this idea of care in the home happen. And the truth is that that our choices in life, and we do have choices, it will make a difference. It will have an impact. Um, but it's never going to be perfect. If you have a picture in your mind like, oh, it's going to be like this and it's going to be lovely and everybody's going to be wonderful and doing care or whatever, that's just not the reality. Reality is that we're going to struggle and we're going to try to figure it out, and we're going to, we'll work it. And some caregivers are going to work really well with a person. Other people may not be the ideal person. You have to switch and get until you get that
Yep.
ideal person, and that's just. But that's life. Life is not, a fairy tale. Life is this kind of real and wonderful and messy and difficult thing, but somehow we make it through if we're pointing in the right direction. So, yeah.
Well, thank you from your mobile studio.
Yeah, that's
I,
right. Oh, hopefully we won't do this very often, but hey, we're doing it.
and I want people to know, even though he's in his mobile studio has not moved.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
we would not be recording if the car was in motion. So again, thank you, Doug, and we will see you next month. Have a
All
great
right, take
day.
care.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.